If you want to develop custom WordPress sites, plugins, or themes, it's important to understand how WordPress works under the hood. One of the first things you should learn about is how WordPress and web servers work together. At the most basic level, WordPress is a web application that runs on a web server. But what makes up a web server, and what makes it possible for the web server to run WordPress? A web server is a computer that is connected to the internet and is configured to serve web pages. Web servers come in all shapes, sizes, and configurations, but ultimately they're all just computers, just like the one you use every day to work on. What makes a web server a little bit different is that it has software installed and configured to serve a web application like WordPress. WordPress runs on a tech stack called LAMP. LAMP stands for Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. Linux is the operating system that manages the hardware and software resources of the server. Apache is the web server software that is used to serve information on a web server. When you type a URL into your browser, the browser sends a request for some information to the web server. The web server then responds with the information that you requested. The web server software is what makes this possible. By default, Apache is configured to serve static files. Static files are files that don't change. Examples of static files include HTML files, image files, or video files. HTML files can be styled using CSS and can be made interactive using JavaScript. MySQL is a database software that is used to store information about the site on the web server. For example, if you are running an online store, you will need to store information about the products that you are selling. This is where a MySQL database comes in. PHP is the programming language that is used to create dynamic web pages. PHP is a server-side language, which means that it's executed on a web server, and the results are sent to the browser. In an online store, PHP is used to fetch the product information from the MySQL database and display it on the web page browser. Here's an example of a WordPress request flow. When a user visits a URL on a WordPress site, the following happens. The browser sends a request to the web server for the data at the URL that the user entered. The web server receives the request and determines which file should be executed to serve the requested data. In a WordPress website, this will be the index.php file, which is in the root directory for a front-end request, or the specific file in the WP admin directory for an admin request. The PHP interpreter executes the PHP code. If required, the PHP code will interact with the MySQL database to retrieve any required data. The PHP code will then output HTML code and include any relevant CSS or JavaScript. The web server will send the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript code back to the browser, and the browser will render this code and display the page to the user. Understanding how this process works under the hood is important, as it will give you a good idea as to how pages are processed when we use a content management system.